with Michael Harris.
Good evening. Premier Clyde Wells responded today to recent questions about the APA contract. Last week, NTV aired a feature report on government's decision to award a major contract to a fledgling company with well-known Liberal connections. Today, Wells said the report contained inconsequential facts. The Premier said a reported friendship between Development Minister Chuck Fury and APA owner Gary Anstey was irrelevant in the awarding of the $2.4 million contract.
There's little or no foundation to the inference from what was done on NTV. As I saw that program, all they did was took a half a dozen innocuous things that by themselves were innocuous and put it together and called it a story, the APA story. Now I know the girl from NTV who interviewed me first, Valerie Feltham, I think, told me that the basis for it was a complaint by the Total or Sega Communications people. They missed out on the bid. Well, I know that they had the contract before, that they were the Conservative Party, they did the campaign work, and then they had I know that. And I know they're upset that they lost it. But I'm satisfied on all of everything that I've looked at, that I have not seen yet anything that gives me any cause for concern. Now, if somebody has some real substance, I will most certainly take a look at it. I'm completely open-minded on it. But don't point to those innocuous things and say, we photographed Chuck Fury and some other individual together one time, and from that we conclude so-and-so. I mean, I think they've jumped a monstrous chasm, and if you've got something of substance, by all means bring it to me, and nothing will ever be hidden or covered up. I will see that everything is explored. But as a matter of fact, I was told today that Mr. Windsor and somebody else, I believe Mr. Hodder, from the opposition, were provided with a full opportunity to examine everything, to meet with the civil servants who made the recommendations and discussed the basis for it, and they indicated their complete satisfaction. Now, why Mr. Ryder should be making these silly statements is more than I can imagine on.
The Premier today said he found no evidence to support allegation of patronage and does not plan to call a public inquiry. Late this afternoon, development critic Neil Windsor said Wells is failing to address the real issues. Windsor will be a guest on NTV's First Edition News Monday. Clyde Wells says the GST battle could spark a major political crisis in this country. John Crosby dismisses this week's events as a shameful spectacle by the Liberal senators. NTV Jim Toms met both politicians as they arrived in St. John's last night.
In Ottawa, Tories and Liberals, Commons and Senate, are caught up in a bitter battle over the goods and services tax. The Tories are trying to get it approved. The Liberals want to kill it. Premier Wells was in Ottawa yesterday as the battle raged, returning to St. John's last night. On the same flight was John Crosby. On their minds was the struggle centered on the Senate.
If the senators feel strongly on the basis of principle that the GST proposal is wrong for Canada, not only do they have a right to vote against it, they have a responsibility to vote against it.
The opposition is making a shameful spectacle of themselves. They're supporting the idea that the unelected Senate, with a majority composed of appointees of Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Pearson, now imagine back in Mr. Pearson's time, should be allowed to veto and to stop the program of the elected government.
I believe the federal government is the author of its own misfortune. I think they misrepresented to the people what the GST was.
Goods and services tax may not be popular, but is the public going to support an unelected Senate?
If the Prime Minister thinks that their approach is wrong, then the course that's open to him, I would suggest, is to ask the Governor-General for a dissolution of the House of Commons and take the issue to the electorate.
What about if he had a little knot of people appointed by Conservative governments of the past here in Newfoundland refusing to pass his legislation? Do you think our great hero, Mr. Wells, with his honesty and integrity, would then say, this is terrific, I'm going to go to an election?
A federal election may be out, but look for a provincial by-election in St. John's East before the end of next month. Premier Wells is likely to call it Monday or Tuesday, for the last week in October.
It hasn't yet been discussed in Cabinet, and I'm going to have to do it fairly soon now. We've been pretty busy, as you know, with other things, with Hibernia and so on, and there really has not been time to make the decision.
Well, do you plan to have it before the end of October?
Oh, I don't know. I can't see why we would delay it. It's most probable that it would be before the end of October, I would think.
So you'd have to call it on Monday or Tuesday, would you, next week?
Well, yeah, around about that time, sometime next week, you'd have to call it, and you're going to have it before the end of October.
Wells is riding high on the reception he got across Canada this week. Some people, especially in British Columbia, wanted him to run for Prime Minister. His response was that he has to learn French first. Jim Toms, NTV News.
And now to the response of ordinary people. Newfoundlanders have turned a skeptical eye on recent developments in Ottawa. Some criticize government for stacking the Senate. Others criticize senators for blocking the work of an elected legislature. But as Darren Rogers reports, virtually everyone believes political reform is badly needed.
This week, Brian Mulroney was rated in a Gallup poll as the least popular Prime Minister in Canadian history. And much of the reason is the problem Mulroney has faced with the goods and services tax. The Liberal Senate has forced Mulroney to introduce 8 Conservatives to the upper house in order to have the GST legislation passed. This legislation is very unpopular across the country, and the same is true for Newfoundland.
Well, as I see it, I think the Liberals were in a position to correct the whole thing previous to the recent additions.
He goes against people's wishes. As far as the GST is concerned, I think Canadians are going to live with a certain amount of discomfort, whether they like it or not, you know.
But aside from the GST, many people in this province don't like the Liberal senators or the Conservative government's tactics on the issue. Many feel it's time for some real change to come to the governing system of this country.
Well, I think it's terrible that they're loading the Senate just to get their own way. It's just not a democratic situation at all, I don't think.
I'm not too sure if it's constitutionally correct to stack the members.
I think the whole thing is ridiculous. I don't think the Senate has the right to do what they're doing with the Liberal Senate, that is, with the stalling tactics, but I don't like what Mulroney has done either to stack the Senate in his favor.
Even though opinions in St. John's are mixed over the dilemma in the Canadian Senate, 2 things are evident. Most people don't want the GST, and many people are now questioning the political system in this country. In St. John's, I'm Darren Rogers for NTV News.
The Wells government may be trying to cut costs to overcome its 1990 deficit. But as NTV's Lynn Burry reports, the economic slowdown that created the deficit is also increasing the expenses of at least one department of government. Social Services Minister John Efford says he will need a budget increase of several $1 million this year.
The number of people on social assistance grew by more than 3,000 this summer. That means the provincial government had to pay out an additional $20 million. The increase is blamed on the state of the Newfoundland economy and the new unemployment insurance regulations. Many people cannot get 14 weeks of work. The Minister of Social Services, John Efford, says the situation makes cutbacks in his department very difficult.
But when you're talking about an average year, 20,000 people could go as high as 25 to 26,000. It's frightening numbers. And of course, our budget here in the Department of Social Services is already a great concern to us, and those numbers would even put it worse.
While the situation is bad now, John Efford says it could get a lot worse. Pat Lee of the City Food Index in St. John's agrees with that assessment. He has been involved in distributing food to needy families for 25 years. He says this summer has been the worst on record.
We're working day and night. We're here Saturdays, Sundays, don't matter. And we just can't keep up with the paperwork and the helping of the needy.
It's possible that another 3,000 people could be on social assistance within the next few months. Now the province is looking to Ottawa for help. John Efford says the 14-week UI requirement is too high for this province, and he's hoping Ottawa will give Newfoundland special consideration. If that doesn't happen, the Social Services Department could make it very difficult for government to cut expenditures. Lynn Burry, NTV News.
38 people charged with being in a common gaming house are trying to recover money seized during a police raid. Defense lawyers appeared in court today to ask that police return $160,000 that was removed from Jade Gardens in early August. But the proceedings took a strange twist. When challenged by the Crown prosecutor, defense counsel could not identify the section of the criminal code that formed the basis for their request. The matter has been put over until next Friday. Given the state of Newfoundland's fishery, there was a rather unusual occurrence today in St. Mary's. A new fish plant opened in that community, and Federal Trade Minister John Crosbie was there for the ceremony. And a very different ceremony it was than his recent trips to places like Trepassey. The new owners are Vietnamese, they're getting some help from ACOA, and they want to produce seafood sauce from male capelin.
And he's buying male capelin, something like 3 million pounds, I think, this first year. And then you ferment it with salt and some kind of process. And his operation is doing a very valuable service because he uses the fish, male capelin, we're throwing away. And he's employing 10 or 12 people
and marketing in his own country?
No, marketing it in North America, because there's many thousands of Vietnamese here in Canada and the United States who are importing this product at the moment from Thailand and Vietnam, etc. And he's going to supply it here using fish that we normally have no use for.
Federal investigators have completed a probe into one of Newfoundland's bigger oil deals. Two local businessmen who are better known for selling fish than pumping gas want to purchase the Texaco chain. But as Linda Strobridge reports, Ottawa has some deep concerns about selling gas stations to Island Petroleum.
Consumer and Corporate Affairs had expected to complete its review of the Texaco takeover by September 4th. But now federal officials say it will be early October before they accept or reject the bid by Ultramar and Island Petroleum to purchase Texaco's assets in Atlantic Canada.
All this means to me is that clearly the Competition Office must be reviewing some fairly significant questions. Otherwise, they would have been able to make the decision quickly after the August 31st submissions.
Investigators stopped gathering information about the Texaco deal late this week, but senior bureaucrats are demanding another round of meetings with key players to discuss some troubling issues. In particular, Ottawa is not convinced that Island Petroleum, a fledgling company headed by fish giants Joe George and Brian Babb, has sufficient expertise in the oil patch to successfully run a chain of service stations. Former Premier Frank Moores enabled his son-in-law's company to tap some expertise. Jack Armstrong, a former CEO of Imperial Oil, became chairman of Island Petroleum after Armstrong and Babb met at a Christmas party hosted by Frank Moores. But federal investigators say Armstrong's expertise may not soothe Island's growing pains. The chairman is not expected to participate in the day-to-day operations of the new firm. In addition, some investigators fear Island is little more than a corporate cousin of Ultramar. The two firms submitted a joint bid for the Texaco assets, and Ultramar has already agreed to supply gasoline to Island Petroleum. That kind of tight-knit arrangement could leave Newfoundlanders facing reduced competition and higher prices at the gas pumps.
There's a general perception among the public, I think, that there is insufficient competition among the oil companies right now, and that perception comes to the fore in times like these when oil prices are rising steeply.
Consumer and Corporate Affairs is expected to rule on the takeover bid, which is worth more than $115 million by the end of next week. Linda Strobridge, NTV News.
One of Newfoundland's largest companies is hoping to become an oil major. A. Harvey & Company already owns 51% of Petro-Canada shares in Newfoundland. But now Ottawa is planning to privatize Petro-Can, and A. Harvey seems eager to buy up the remaining shares. When contacted by NTV News, President Charles Patton declined an on-camera interview. But Patton said Petro-Canada is one of the best buys on the market today, and A. Harvey would love to purchase more shares. We stumbled onto one small fact today that might prove interesting to Energy Minister Rex Gibbons. Last week, the minister said the Persian Gulf crisis should not affect gas prices until November. The oil companies obviously weren't listening. We filmed the gas station sign on the day Dr. Gibbons warned oil majors to contain their greed or face price controls. This was the same sign today. And now this city news. A section of St. John's, Rennie's Mill Road to be precise, has been designated a National Historic District. NTV's Valerie Feltham has more.
St. John's is known for its many examples of fine architecture. Rennie's Mill Road is a case in point. The first suburban area in the city, some 25 homes were built here between 1850 and the 1920s. With few changes, the street looks much the same as it did when the last dwelling was constructed 65 years ago. Because of its history and architecture, Rennie's Mill Road has now been formally recognized as a National Historic District. According to Shane O'Day, Rennie's Mill Road represents a significant portion of Newfoundland's heritage.
On this street live many of Newfoundland's Newfoundland's prime ministers, writers, mayors, chief justices, and these buildings represent, in many cases, the finest examples of their styles in the whole of Newfoundland.
Rennie's Mill Road is the second historic district in St. John's. Following today's ceremony, this monument will remain on permanent display in Bannerman Park. Valerie Feltham, NTV News.
And now to our business report. When we come back, the GST battle heats up in the House of Commons.
'90 was a year of great accomplishments and an incredible year for Honda. The Honda Accord was named the #1 selling car in North America. Motor Trend magazine named the Honda Civic one of the top 10 new car best buys. Atlantic Canada, get ready, because your new Hondas are here, and they start at under $10,000. See your Atlantic Honda dealers. Our bottom line is value. Value now, value later.
It's the Lotto 649 Jackpot Alert Team. The jackpot's going up this draw.
Great van. I could use a van like that.
I wonder how high it's going up.
Great horse. I could use a horse like that.
It's way up.
Of course it's up. Now that's up.
Imagine what you could do if you won this multi-million-dollar Lotto 649 jackpot.
I can imagine a lot of things, like a car or...
Lotto 649.
You can go as far as your heart can see, beyond any road that you want to be, 'cause it's your day.
For a limited time, Kentucky Fried Chicken has reduced its bucket.
Maybe it's just me, but I don't think something this size can hold 15 pieces of chicken. The lid thing doesn't work. I mean, how can I get this home? I'm going to be stranded.
Our 15-piece bucket is now reduced, in price only.
Maybe they expect me to eat some of it here before I go home. Is that it?
Get your $13.99 bucket today.
The battle over the goods and services tax raged on today. As Bill Rogers of CFTO reports, government's decision to appoint 8 new senators sparked a heated exchange in the House of Commons.
The daily question period was dominated by angry exchanges over the GST and the dramatic events of yesterday. The finance minister says more than the GST is being blocked in the Senate.
We are not going to allow the integrity of the government to be undermined by a man who was a Minister of Finance here and failed in that position.
Member for Ottawa South. I think, Mr. Speaker, Canadians will find it ironic to hear a Minister of Finance who is no longer believed by the people of Canada, in a government that is universally detested, promoting a tax that is universally hated, and pleading for democracy.
Meantime, the Senate chamber is silent today as Liberal senators refuse to show up for a procedural vote. They say they will not return until at least next Tuesday. Bill Rogers, CFTO News, Ottawa.
And now to the Middle East. Canadian warships sent to the Persian Gulf have reached their forward operations base of Bahrain. 2 destroyers are scheduled to begin patrolling the region next week in an effort to enforce UN sanctions against Iraq. As Guy Gendron of CFCF reports, one of the dangers facing Canadian sailors is chemical warfare.
The Canadian Army is used to train against submarine or naval attacks, against planes, or even missiles. But in the Persian Gulf, where they will be deployed before the end of the month, the Canadian forces could well face a new enemy.
There's quite a production capability in Iraq for chemical weapons especially.
These deadly weapons have killed hundreds of thousands of people in the Iran-Iraq war just a few years back. For Iraq, it has become a local specialty. So since they passed the Suez Canal, crew members from the 3 Canadian ships carry with them at all times, night and day, their gas mask. Everybody also got one of these chemical warfare suits. Great, except for a problem. When it's 40 degrees in the shade, it doesn't take long before they turn into an aquarium.
In those types of suits, in the heavy chemical suits, men can lose up to 3 or 4 liters of water an hour.
At this pace, nobody could survive very long without drinking. The helicopter crew are more fortunate. They have just received special suits equipped with a cooling system. And more importantly, it allows them to drink through the mask. As for the rest of the crew, the Navy stresses that a chemical attack at sea would probably dissipate within 1 or 2 hours.
It's not like being in a battlefield where the enemy could eventually fire a weapon 5 miles down the road, and there you are. We have a lot of maneuverability, and so the element is good to us in that respect.
But just in case, new masks have been ordered, and if they are lucky, the 950 crew members could get them once they reach the middle of the Persian Gulf. Guy Gendron, a border protector.
And now for our weekly chat with the teddy bear of Canadian journalism, Ottawa-based journalist and pundit, Mike Duffy. Well, Mike Duffy, I guess the big story in Ottawa today is that every political bottom feeder in the country seems to have gone to his reward in the Senate.
Well, there's a few missed out, Michael. Brian Peckford, Flora MacDonald, former Cabinet Minister Bob Coates. But you're right, most of the stars have gotten their eternal reward. As somebody says, it's cash for life. An appointment to the Senate is a taskless thanks.
Mike, let me ask you this. When this whole controversy finally shakes down, for whom will the bells be tolling? Will it be for the Prime Minister for trying to force through by stacking the Senate a very unpopular tax bill, or will it be for the Senate, a non-elected body, which is trying to foist its will on a duly elected House of Commons?
Well, Michael, I think this really resides in the court of public opinion. The Liberals had a caucus last evening in which they said, as long as we can keep the issue on the odious GST, we win. The minute the public starts debating the propriety of the Senate doing what it's doing, they're afraid that they'll lose. And so it's one of these games where each side is now rolling out its cannons. Behind me this afternoon, PR people from the Liberal Party have been running around saying, would you like a guest for Sunday edition? What can we do to help explain our side of the story? When it's bad news, of course, they all run for cover and hide. But here they're trying to win in the court of public opinion, and I think it's a bit too early to tell which way it'll go. It's one of those double-edged swords. Let me just say, without quoting my mother, that I checked my PEI sources, and they seem to think that anything that stops the tax is good with them, and we'll worry about the historical precedents later.
One of the things that we've learned down here is that the Conservatives may have underestimated the wiliness of the Silver Fox of Cape Breton, Alan McEachin.
I don't think there's any question that McEachin fooled them again. They thought that when the Senate came back, there would be a proposal for a whole raft of amendments. The senators had leaked word, the Liberal senators, that they had a 400-page report back to the Senate. It's 400 pages, all right, but the bottom line is a single line, kill the tax. So when the box was opened, the Tories, instead of finding a whole bunch of proposed amendments which would allow them to negotiate and work it out with the Senate, they saw a gun pointing them right between the eyes that said, you're dead. And that's why Mulroney was forced to move much more quickly than he'd hoped to get those 8 senators in and to try and pull this thing off by stacking the Senate.
One of the Senate appointments was Janice Johnson, former wife of Newfoundland Premier Frank Moores, who had already been placed on the board of CN. Is there any talk in Ottawa? Is there any talk in Ottawa that
she's not up to doing both jobs at once?
I would say this: she is going to be the most beautiful senator.
That's for sure. But no, you're right. What we see here are people the Prime Minister's known for years and years and years. And don't forget, it was Frank Moores who engineered the downfall of Joe Clark with the assistance of Bob Coates. Janice Johnson was right there, part of the team that put Brian Mulroney where he is today. Frank Moores has been off in the lobbying business making a fortune, and Janice Johnson will now be added to the Senate where, as you say, she will certainly provide brains and beauty at the same time.
One last question, Mike. I understand there's an interesting sideshow with 2 Maritimers squaring off. We've got Alan McEachin on one side and Lowell Murray on the other.
Exactly, and then and a whole bunch of other Tories and Liberals with maritime roots who are all deeply involved in this. It's funny to see the kind of personal animus that flashes in the eyes of these 2 men, because they both know each other's backgrounds very well, and they both know that in Atlantic Canada, we play for keeps in politics, and this is a real game for keeps. Too early to predict who's going to win, but one thing we know, it's going to be very colorful and very bloody before it's over.
Mike, thank you very much for this. We look forward to what you have to say to us next week as this story unfolds.
Super. Take care, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, our Person of the Week.
Introducing Hot Wings, new from Kentucky Fried Chicken. Tender chicken wings, a crispy coating, and just a little extra zip. Get them while they're hot. Hot Wings, new from Kentucky Fried Chicken.
If you're looking for things for your home, there's only one place to look. Only one store makes the lowest price the law on brand name products your family loves. And only one store gives you free valuable Club Z points with everything you buy.
Where the lowest price is the
Fact is, we're number one. Why not call us first?
I just did something about Oat Bran. I changed my cereal to Cheerios. Cheerios has Oat Bran, Cornflakes and Rice Krispies don't. And the Bran and Raisin Bran isn't Oat Bran. So starting now, I'm eating Cheerios every morning.
While others have raised prices, Volkswagen announced no price increase. In fact, we've lowered the price on our 1990 Golf. So the best-selling car in Europe is now even more affordable in Atlantic Canada. With more power and more passenger cargo room than Honda Civic, the versatile Golf is priced over $1,200 less than last year. That's Volkswagen value. The 1990 Golf. It's time to think about Volkswagen again.
Our Person of the Week is a man burdened with a heavy political cross. For over a year, Municipal Affairs Minister Eric Gullidge has promoted a controversial amalgamation plan. Well, this week, the man often touted as Eric the Amalgamator finally got a vote of confidence. But as NTV's Darren Rogers reports, Eric Gullidge is still facing a series of uphill battles.
As a member of St. John City Council, Eric Gullidge was usually silent compared to his colleagues Andy Wells and Mayor John Murphy, but nonetheless always had a comment on any issue being tackled by the city at the time. On March 9th of 1988, Gullidge joined Clyde Wells' opposition Liberals by winning a by-election for Waterford Ken Mount. This win was heralded by the Liberals as the beginning of the end for Tory dominance in the province. In September of that same year, Treasury Board President Winston Baker, then chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, declared 80% of Newfoundland municipalities bankrupt, and he called for a better system.
And it has to change. The system that we now have has created this horrendous situation. We have to somehow change the system.
So when Clyde Wells took over as Premier of Newfoundland, he brought Eric Gullidge with him to Cabinet, giving Gullidge the portfolio of municipal and provincial affairs, along with that of recreation. The former city councillor then began his career in provincial politics the hard way. As Minister of Municipal Affairs, he was responsible for implementing government's unpopular amalgamation proposal, a proposal that put the province's municipalities back on their feet, a proposal that would see over 100 Newfoundland communities grouped into less than 50. And indeed, it became a hard sell, even with some of his former St. John's Council colleagues.
And I think procedurally, they've done a very poor job of organizing the hearings.
Here's weeknights following Nightline on 7.